Hi Guy, welcome back. Why did our spoilers reveal that Christmas always has a way of pulling people back toward one inner people who swore they'd moved on? People who built careful distance. People who told themselves the past was finished. The athletic club glittered with holiday elegance that night. Light spilling through tall windows. Garlands dripped with intentional perfection. And the particular Genoa city atmosphere that feels warm on the surface but tense underneath. As if every smile is carefully measured, Victoria arrived with Johnny and Katie, wearing the calm, controlled composure she is known for, yet carrying a different rhythm in her chest than the one she uses in boardrooms and family wars. This was not a night for power. It was a night for her children, for memory, for the quiet obligations of parenthood that never disappear no matter how complicated life becomes. She reminded herself that Billy's presence here was simply part of co-parenting, that the friction between the Newmans and the Abbotts had no right to touch Johnny and Katie, that she could keep the evening steady if she stayed disciplined. But discipline has cracks, and the holidays are experts at finding them. That was why when Victoria unexpectedly crossed paths with Billy beneath a low-hanging sprig of mistletoe, she was caught off guard by the subtle collision of present and past. No dramatic impact. No obvious scandal, just the kind of soft shock that can shake a person more than any shouting match. Billy wasn't standing there like a man trying to provoke anything. And he wasn't trying to win points against the Newman name. He looked like a father, reaching for a rare pocket of peace for his kids in the middle of a year that had felt like constant combat. His smile arrived before words did, warm, familiar, carrying the faint weight of older holidays, the ones when they had once believed their family could stay intact. Victoria returned it, careful not to step across any lines, careful not to deny what had once been real. And that careful balance was exactly what made the moment feel so charged. Because both of them understood the edge they were walking. Lean too far toward emotion and everything gets messy. Lean too far toward distance and the children feel it. In that brief stretch of time, they allowed memory to surface like an old photograph as Christmases. Kids racing around a tree, laughter, gifts, and the undeniable truth that no matter what had broken, they still shared something permanent. Nostalgia didn't turn into promises or confessions. It existed like a silent exhale, something neither of them could say out loud, but both could feel in full. Across the room, Sally was looking for Billy. She moved through clusters of guests, keeping her social smile in place, but stacking worries in her mind like fragile ornaments. Sally had learned how to stand beside Billy during storms, how to absorb pressure, how to survive the chaos that often followed him. But nothing unsettled her quite like the invisible war with his past. When she spotted Billy and Victoria beneath the mistletoe, she didn't witness an unmistakable betrayal. Nothing she could point to, nothing blatant enough to justify a public reaction. That was precisely why the discomfort was dangerous. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It crept in and made her feel small inside a family picture she still didn't know how to enter. The image felt like a reminder that Billy and Victoria had history Sally could never erase. And during the holidays, history is treated like something sacred. She didn't want to be the person who ruined the mood. She didn't want to become the woman who constantly had to prove she deserved her place. Yet the awkwardness and unease swelled anyway, soft as falling snow, but steadily accumulating. And still, the children pulled everyone back to where they needed to be. Johnny and Katie arrived with the pure excitement only kids can carry. And that excitement forced the adults to adjust. The small Christmas tree decorating gathering wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was meant to give Johnny and Katie one peaceful night to let them feel that their family still existed in some form, even if it no longer looked the way it once did. Victoria, accustomed to control, softened when she looked at her kids. Billy, often reckless with his own life, became unusually patient around them, as if fatherhood was the one place he refused to sabotage himself. And Sally, faced with the moment, had to make a quiet choice. Let her insecurity steer her or step into the room with the maturity she was still teaching herself how to practice. The mention of 3 guests arriving to help decorate added a strange undercurrent to the evening. It sounded harmless, just a festive detail, but in a space where past and present were already pressing against each other, any arrival could become a catalyst. Victoria felt that before she even glanced at Billy because she knew how easily innocent gatherings turned into emotional flashpoints. Billy sensed it too, but he chose to focus on keeping Johnny and Katie happy, as if effort alone could keep complications at bay. Sally felt it most sharply of all because she understood the fragile nature of what she was attempting to exist here without losing herself. Sally's awkwardness didn't show up as accusations or sharp words. It appeared in tiny pauses, in the way she calculated whether she should hand Johnny an ornament or let Victoria do it, in the way she watched Billy and then watched the children. Searching for proof that she wasn't an outsider. Victoria, meanwhile, carried her own private struggle. She wanted to demonstrate that she could do this right. She could be the perfect mother, keep everything civil, keep the evening warm and stable. But beneath that determination sat a fear she hated admitting, the fear that if she softened too much around Billy, she would wake something she had buried just to keep moving forward. That fear felt even worse because it appeared during a season when everyone expects sheer unity and effortless grace. The tension between the Newman and Abbott families lingered like a wall outside the edge of the gathering, unspoken, but present in every careful glance and restrained choice. It didn't burst into the tree decorating moment as a confrontation, but it shaped the room's caution. The children didn't understand it and didn't deserve to. That was exactly why Victoria and Billy, despite everything bigger than them, tried to become the kind of parents Johnny and Katie could rely on in that moment. They didn't need long conversations or deep emotional declarations. They simply coordinated instinctively the way they once had done many times before. They made sure their children felt loved, saw both parents close by, and experienced a holiday not poisoned by a felt coldness. As Sally tried to find her place, she stumbled into a hard truth she didn't want but needed. Her position wasn't to replace Victoria, and it wasn't to steal Billy from his past. Her position was to choose how to be present without hurting the children and without hurting herself. That required a painful kind of growth because it meant temporarily releasing the desire to be the unquestioned center of Billy's world. When Sally finally stepped in more naturally, it wasn't to prove anything to Victoria. It was to prove something to herself, that she could love Billy without surrendering her self-respect. That she could be near his family without being swallowed by their history. For a while, it worked. Johnny and Katie glowed as the tree filled with ornaments, their laughter bright enough to loosen the adults' shoulders. Victoria watched her children and felt her heart soften. Proud that she had made the right decision bringing them here. Billy watched the scene and felt an unfamiliar relief. At least tonight he hadn't ruined anything. Sally watched Billy as a father and her initial discomfort shifted into something more complicated. Tenderness, fear, and a fierce determination not to become the woman crushed under someone else's past. But the holidays never stop at the first moment of peace. The mention of those 3 guests stopped being a harmless detail and became a quiet pulse beneath the surface. Because in Genoa City, no reunion stays simple. Every door that opens can bring a secret, a misunderstanding, or a twist that turns fragile warmth into fresh damage. Victoria felt an uneasy instinct, as if the peace they had built was nothing more than thin ice. Billy felt it too, but he kept it off his face for the kids' sake. Sally, sensitive to every signal of instability, tensed again, knowing that one wrong element could undo everything she had tried so carefully to hold together. Then a sound rose from the intrank ordinary noise that landed like a question mark. Victoria, Billy, and Sally all turned their attention the same way without meaning to. No one spoke, but all 3 of them recognized the same truth in the air. The night wasn't finished, and whatever came next could decide whether this unexpected warmth was a rare step forward or only the opening note of a new storm. The hook waited there right in the breath before the door fully opened. In the moment, none of them could be sure they would stay composed when the 3 guests finally arrived and forced them to face what they had been avoiding all season. Christmas night at the athletic club always carries Genoa City's signature kind of glamour, where the golden lights seem designed to cover everything people refuse to say out loud. Distinguished guests gather in flawless outfits. Holiday music glides softly beneath the high ceilings. And the scent of wine and evergreen mingles into a carefully curated warmth of velvet wrap everyone wears so they can pretend for a few hours that the battles of the year have paused. Yet behind the sparkle, there are watchful eyes, heavy hearts, and memories that refuse to stay quiet simply because the season demands cheer. Into that scene, Victoria appears as a familiar emblem of elegance and control. She doesn't rush. Her posture is steady, her smile measured, perfectly polite, perfectly unreadable, as if no one could possibly reach the deeper current of her mood. But her gaze doesn't fully belong to the room. It moves through the crowd with the instinct of someone who has spent years assessing threats and intentions, then catches on small details in uneven wreath. The laughter of an old circle. The clank of glasses held a little too tight lion. Those small details pull her backward into earlier holidays, into nights that felt simpler. When the word family didn't come with so many sharp edges, Victoria didn't come to relive the past. She repeats that to herself as if repetition could train her heart to obey. She came because appearances matter. Because a Newman cannot vanish from a room where power and image knot together. And because the holidays sometimes require presence even when a person has very little left to celebrate. She keeps her distance at the right temperature, not cold enough to invite questions, not warm enough to invite assumptions. Still, something restless stays alive beneath her calm. It isn't exactly sadness, and it isn't exactly regret. It's the discomfort of being tugged toward memories she has worked hard to pack away. The kind of memories that return every December like they have their own key to the locked rooms of her mind. Christmas has a cruel talent for making people remember what once was. And for Victoria, what once was is never just a pleasant picture. Writes a reminder of how much she has had to force herself to become someone who survives undisciplined more than feeling. Across the room, Billy enters with his familiar energy off like he could laugh at any social rule and half-wired like he knows one wrong step could send his life skidding back into chaos. His eyes sweep over faces that are friends, rivals, and witnesses to his worst instincts. He isn't seeking attention, but he can't fully disappear either. In this place, he exists like a story everyone knows. A man who can create surprising warmth and then destroy it with a single reckless choice. He comes in with a clear purpose in his head. But parties like this rarely allow anyone to cling to a plan. Genoa City specializes in arranging collisions at the most perfect and most dangerous moments. And then it happens. Biz's gaze catches Victoria's. Not from a safe distance, not in a way either of them can pretend they missed. It's close enough to be unavoidable, intimate enough to feel like the room has shifted around them. Beneath a shimmering sprag of mistletoe hang as a harmless holiday tradition, almost a jackety stop, startled by the simple fact of facing each other. Mistletoe is supposed to invite sweetness. But for them, it becomes a symbol of what never truly ended. For a second, the sounds of the room fall back into blur. The music, the laughter, the clinking glasses all fade into a distant backdrop. At the center, there is only Victoria and Billy, and a strange stillness, neither hatred nor romance, but the silence of two people who were once too familiar to behave like strangers now. Their first instinct might have been to avoid each other because avoidance is the safest way to keep old feelings from waking up. But the danger of this moment is that they don't do that. Instead, a smile appears warm, genuine, not a social mask, and so sincere that it surprises even them. That smile is a small beam cutting through years of defenses, dissolving the initial chill of surprise and opening a crack wide enough for memory to pour in. Victoria feels it first. She senses herself soften, if only in her eyes, if only in the rhythm of her breathing. Billy feels something familiarized to a feeling tied to a version of his life when he believed things could steady. When he believed he could be better, when holiday nights didn't always come with consequences. They don't speak for long, but they don't need much to understand what they are touching. Their brief exchange isn't an attempt to fix the past, and it isn't a confession disguised as conversation. It's simply a small pocket of time where they allow themselves to remember the Christmas seasons they once shared with their children. The children become the safest bridge between them. The one topic that lets them step closer without falling. To speak of the kids is to speak of the truest thing they ever built together. The moments when they stood beside the tree, when they tried to create a world that was stable enough for young hearts. There is warmth in that nostalgia. But there is also a hidden needle. Every beautiful memory comes with an unspoken question. Why couldn't it stay like this? And that question, even unsaid, tightens the air. Victoria talks while managing herself like she's balancing on thin ice. She doesn't want to reveal too much. She knows a single misplaced expression now softened gaze held too long. A smile that lasts 1 second to many could invite meaning. Could invite gossip. Could invite her own emotions to pull her into places she refuses to revisit. She doesn't want to be trapped inside an old story. Doesn't want to be forced to explain what she feels. Yet, she can't deny the part of her that craves the simplicity of the past. The feeling of looking at Billy without armor. The thought of a holiday night where her heart could be allowed to rest, that inner tug-of-war deepens her thoughtful look, and that thoughtfulness, despite her intention, gives a moment beneath the mistletoe an intimate color. Billy's private battle is just as complicated, perhaps worse. He knows he's the kind of man who can be swept away by emotion. He knows his history with Victoria is a tide that could drag him under if he doesn't plant his feet. But he also knows there are things about Victoria he still respects deeply, and the season turns that respect into a softness that makes him uneasy. As if he's remembering a better version of himself he no longer trusts. Billy doesn't want to ruin anything, at least not tonight. He doesn't want to become the reason a woman has to build her walls higher or the reason a present relationship cracks under the weight of old ghosts. So, he keeps the conversation short, keeps the tone careful, keeps the boundaries intact, but that carefulness makes the moment feel even more real. If they were cold, it would be easier to explain. If they avoided each other, it would be safer. Instead, they allow warmth, just enough warmth to invite questions. While Victoria and Billy talk, they don't realize someone is watching from a distance. Watching not only with eyes, but with fear. Sally, searching for Billy, catches the moment by accident. The casual kind of encounter people dismiss, but the kind where the air around two people seems to quiet as if the world has stepped aside for memory. From where she stands, Sally can't hear the words. But she doesn't need to. She sees the warmth in the smile, the softness in the posture, the way mistletoe frames them like a familiar symbol wrapping around an old story. And that accidental image cuts into her not as a clear betrayal, but as something more unsettling because it cannot be named. Sally isn't the kind of woman who collapses into shallow jealousy. She has lived through too much to believe love can be measured by a single glance. But the discomfort rising in her chest isn't about who Victoria is. It's about the fact that there is a world between Billy and Victoria that Sally has never belonged to. A world made of old holidays, family memories, lived history rather than new beginnings. She feels as if she's standing outside a locked room, seeing warmth through a narrow crack. Warmth she thought Billy was building with her, only to realize it existed long before she arrived and might still exist without her. The feeling doesn't explode into anger. It becomes a ripple she can't label, part hurt, part worrying, part self-questing. She wonders if she's overreacting. She wonders if Billy understands how this looks from the outside. And most frightening of all, she wonders if she's been playing the role of the confident woman while secretly fearing she's only a temporary chapter in a much longer story. Sally stands still for a beat too long, not because she wants to spy, but because she is trying to control herself. She knows that walking up immediately could make her look like an intruder, like the woman who disrupts a holiday moment. Yet, if she turns away, she risks carrying this feeling through the rest of the night, letting it grow into a shadow she can't shake. She has to choose how to appear without making everything worse while still protecting her dignity. And in that choice, her awkward position becomes painfully clear. She isn't the ex-wife. She isn't the mother inside those memories. And she refuses to become the woman who constantly measures her feelings by whether she has the right to feel them. She is simply Sally loving Billy, trying to believe the present can survive the shape of the past. As Sally wrestles quietly with herself, Victoria and Billy continue their short exchange, completely unaware that they are being watched through a lens loaded with meaning. Their ignorance makes the situation sharper because if they knew, they might have adjusted, stepped back, rebuilt the safe social walls that keep trouble away. But they don't know. And because they don't know, they allow a little more natural warmth. Victoria lets herself smile again. Billy lets his gaze soften. They stay within limits. And do nothing opally inappropriate. Yet the closeness is near enough to be felt, and that is enough for Sally to interpret it as a warning. The room still glows with holiday cheer, as if nothing matters more than reeds and lights. But for these three, one moment beneath mistletoe turns Christmas into a quiet psychological test. Victoria has to ask herself what she's doing, what she is feeling, and whether she is letting emotion sabotage her clarity. Billy has to ask himself if he is unconsciously pulling two women into an old cycle memories with inevitable consequences. Sally has to ask herself if she is strong enough to stand beside Billy without shrinking under the shadow of history, and whether love can ever be simple in a town where everything is examined under lights too bright. The most dangerous part is that none of them can speak these questions right now. No one wants to ruin the party. No one wants to make Christmas into confrontation. Yet the silence makes everything accumulate. Tension becomes a thin layer in the air, not enough for strangers to notice, but enough for the people inside it to feel as if they're breathing in a room with less oxygen. In that air, Sally begins to move forward one careful step at a time, as if she is entering territory where she cannot afford a single mistake. She understands the next moment is critical. The way she appears will decide whether she is part of the presenter. Only a spectator watching the past come alive. By the time Sally is close enough to be seen, the smile she puts on her face will be a decision, not a reflex. Too forced and Victoria will notice. Too cold and Billy will falter. Too familiar and Sally will place herself in a role that doesn't fit. All of that flashes through her mind, and the calculation exhausts her because love shouldn't feel like negotiation. But Genoa City doesn't allow love to stay uncomplicated. And Sally knows that if she wants to remain in Billy's life, she must learn to stand upright even when the air smells like nostalgia. The scene is on the verge of shifting, as if the entire Christmas night is holding its breath for what comes next. Victoria and Billy still haven't turned. Still haven't seen Sally coming. Still don't realize a nameless emotion is rising where there should only be celebration. And Sally, even while she forces calm, feels one truth with clarity. If she steps in at the wrong second, or if she lets discomfort turn into an uncontrolled reaction, colors of the night could change instantly. But if she swallows too much, she might disappear inside the very relationship she is trying to protect. That is the season at its cruelest. It demands smiles while hearts send warnings. And when Sally finally steps close enough that her shadow touches the lights beneath the mistletoe, Victoria and Billy begin to realize there is a third person in this moment, a person who didn't come to destroy Christmas yet could become the spark that forces a truth none of them are ready to face. The hook lands right there in the instant Victoria turns and her eyes meet Sally's for the first time. Well, Billy stands between two women and one question nobody dares to speak. Was that warm smile beneath the mistletoe and innocent flicker of nostalgia are the first sign that a new storm is forming in the middle of the holidays?